In this episode, we talk with Daniel Thompson from Noma Collective, and this is a company who specializes in digital nomad retreats, meetups, and anything else for remote workers who are looking for an adventure and excursion in exotic locations. And this could be potentially one of the best investments you make in your business and or both your life in 2024 or whatever year you're watching this. So if that's of interest to you, then let's get into today's episode. Daniel Thompson, man, it's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast for part number 2 here because we didn't have enough time together in Belize. So what's going on today?
So it's a rare rainy day in Merida here. So we're taking advantage of the cool breeze. They say helades here, which is a very Yucatecan word for when it goes from 35 degrees Celsius to 25. So any normal person would probably still feel hot, but we are in like one of the hottest places in the world. So yeah, it's a rare cool moment where we don't need too many fans.
That's awesome. I'm in Canada, as you know, and the last time we were together, it was smoking hot and sweating in Belize, which was great. Now we're getting into the winter months here in Canada, and I'm just like pining over going back to Belize next summer now.
Yeah, man, me too. It was a great experience. I think for our first trip, I think we had a bunch of awesome, crazy people that joined us to make that happen. And now we're kind of rolling out the official first year of family trips, and it's been received really well. So I'm super happy.
Yeah, we had an incredible time. I guess we should circle back to like what is Noma Collective, what this episode is going to be about, and who can really benefit from this. So you're one of the founders of Noma Collective. Take us through what it is, who it's for, and who could benefit, and where it's going.
Yeah, totally. So Noma Collective is a digital nomad / remote worker travel community. We essentially do 2 to 4 week trips around the world, facilitating remote workers so that they can travel while still maintaining their job or continuing to be an entrepreneur. I think like the way I like to explain it is we solve 2 problems. One is that travel can be daunting and time consuming. So we have this kind of plug and play setup, turnkey, if you will, where you come and everything's ready. We pick you up from the airport. We make sure you have good co-working space, internet, all the things that you need to do your job and then also have fun in that local location. And then the second thing is that remote work can be a bit lonely. We've all lived through COVID. We know what it's like. It offers an immense amount of freedom, but it can actually kind of be a bit lonely in that living room. And so now that all of these restrictions have rolled back and we're post-COVID, it's like you don't have to do it from your living room. You can do it from anywhere in the world. But do you have those people to do it with? Do you want to do it on your own? Sometimes people want to make that jump and sometimes they don't. So what we have is this plug and play community. There's at least 10 to 20 people there, similar, like-minded, ready to enjoy that beautiful place with you.
Yeah, it's something that I didn't realize was needed because I've been doing this since like 2008. I've been a remote worker, before it was cool to be a remote worker, before it was like modern, right? And nowadays it's something I'm used to, but I'm seeing a lot of people in teams that get lonely. It's a very lonely thing to be doing if you don't have outside access to people or friends who are also remote workers. But I want to reshift this a little bit because I was thinking before this episode why it was so important for me to communicate this as a different perspective to businesses. Being a team leader or a company leader, you have to be responsible for your teams and their happiness. And it's harder to do in this digital age, even though the instant gratification and benefit of working from home is like, hey, I don't have to commute. I get to work from home. I get to work in my pajamas, whatever the case is. But the fact is, as a team leader, as a company leader, now you have to deal with churn rate, retention. Are they happy? Are they engaged? And I think that one thing that changed for me, and we did this before I was even aware that there's digital nomad trips out there, was that I was invited to go to Panama from our CEO at the time. And he's still CEO, but he invited me at the time. And I never really traveled outside of Canada and the US. So I was like still, a very inexperienced traveler. And I was kind of hesitant to go. And when I did, and I got to meet the team in person, when I got to experience the real life version of them and the culture that they wanted to build and their vision and the mission, and us bonding in person, just exponentially grew the relationship and the culture from that moment forward. And those 5 or 6 people that were on that trip together, we were then able to extend that courtesy to more people and invite more people to these types of trips and grow the teams and the culture much more than we ever could had we never did these type of trips. But it took a lot of effort on our part to do that. And I think that in 2024, one of the best investments somebody can make if they have a team or a company is to look for a digital excursion like this. Because what a unique time to live in. First of all, like think about like 100 years ago or 50 years ago even. Like how crazy insane was to think this was a possibility nowadays. So anybody that's not traveling, if you're remote working and experiencing the joys and the adventures out there, I just think you're going to regret it eventually at some point if you look back and say, why didn't I take advantage of that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's several buckets that we can get into. One is, your personal growth. One is the team bonding. The other is retention. But I think let's start with the kind of bonding part of it, because and I've read a lot of different things about what is missing from the remote work life. And I think a lot of what people always go back is that there was this ability to connect with your co-workers in the physical space. And I think what a lot of people miss a lot of the time is that when they're trying to push these back to the office type of narratives, that's the number one thing they focus on. And they forget about all these things that we've gained from not having been in the office, like not having to do the commute, spending more time with your family, all the things that I think make someone generally happier in their life. And so when I look at those conversations, I go, it's not always about going backwards if we're missing something. It's about going forwards. And so I think what Noma is trying to solve is, okay, how do we manage this issue of bonding in the new remote work world? I don't think it's going back to the office. I think it's setting up these retreats. It's having a once a quarter meetup or once a year meetup by where everyone gets in the same room, they bond, and then that bonding continues through those virtual meetups. I think it's that first initial connection, that physical connection that is valid. I just don't think it needs to happen in the office. I think there's a better way to do it, right? I think that the value adds of going back to the office aren't outweighing the value adds of the remote work. We just need to figure out how to do that without going back to the office, which I think is the whole point of these retreats.
Yeah. I mean, it's great we get to meet remotely, but to your point, there's something just not satisfying about never getting to meet a person in a personal live environment. It's just, you can't compare it. Like I've been on both sides. And even though I'm a self-proclaimed introvert, I still enjoy these experiences. I loved it. It was very, again, like the bonding experience that happens in person is much more than you can ever get for remote locations. So here's the thing that I want to kind of talk about now. Businesses probably want to do this. They see the benefit in it. How are you kind of helping solve that's a logistical nightmare for me. Okay. So I don't want to have to plan this for my team. It's too much. I don't have a person. I don't know if we have a budget, or how are we going to make sure everyone's entertained and happy? How are you guys bridging the gap? Because I know that recently you guys have made a big play to help businesses now plan their retreats and do all this for them, like a done for you program.
Yeah, I think it's the same premise as someone who's working on their own. There's a lot going on in your job. Everyone's busy. Everyone's got stuff to do. Like adding on what is essentially an entire new job is something that is a massive roadblock. And so just as we take on the responsibilities for you personally, we want to and are doing the same for companies. So I think that you see companies that are remote focused already understanding the retention benefits of this. I think that older companies that didn't hire originally remote are still struggling with starting to see the benefits of this. And I think that as we go into the next generation of workers that were born into remote work, I think it'll be very clear that the benefits for these trips and the relatively small amount of money that you have to pay to do something like this will basically, come back to you tenfold with retention, happiness, and I think general productivity. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think it can be viewed a little bit well, we're just going to be vacationing and not getting anything done. It's it's going to be a very expensive vacation for the company. And meanwhile, we're actually going to miss out on the objectives of the quarter or something. But to your point, it's kind of pausing to go a bit faster as you go. And one of the questions that I had for myself is people probably think of this as it's a vacation maybe, But as much as it is an adventure and it's exotic locations, which we'll get into where you guys are going in 2024 and maybe beyond, it's you guys have done a really good job, at least in the family adventure, which is the only one I had to take part in so far. I'd like to do more, but it's a good balance. You give freedom and breadth for people to actually have time to work. And the internet's fabulous where I was. You guys vet everything too. That was another benefit that I was always concerned about. But yeah, how does like it differentiate between a vacation, the traditional sense of like, going out for 7 days to a resort versus like a trip like this? What's the differences, and like why should businesses consider it to be different than just doing an all expenses paid vacation for their team?
Yeah. Well, it's not a vacation. I think that's the main thing. Like, when people would do this in the past, if they were in the office, it'd be some sort of bonus or some sort of like reward for doing whatever these employees did, and only a certain amount of employees got it, and then they go on a vacation essentially. And I think we need to clearly separate us from that. Like, one of the main thing is that everyone is going to continue to do their day job in the day, except they're all going to be in that for that moment. They're going to be all in the same physical space. And over and above that, we overlay quite a few kind of team bonding exercises. We get experts in to help in whatever area that company needs. A lot of what we do just with our traditional trips, is we look at the people that are on the trip and we make a bespoke calendar for them. So the same goes with these work retreats. People that are coming on board, the line managers, if it's a specific team, we'll have a conversation with them. What sort of things are you looking to build? What are you trying to do? What are the goals that you want to get out of this retreat, this work away retreat, let's say? And then we would build something specific for them. So if they're looking at that at just simply like, team bonding exercises, then we would bring in a specialist for that. So I think like the main differentiation is, we're not vacationing, everyone's working. And on top of that, we have a nice overlay of a bunch of essential like activities that will help the line manager or the CEO or the team in the way that they want.
What I really liked too, what you guys did is, typically I'd want to send somebody to go vet the location, right? I'd want to check out everything. And that requires somebody's time, effort, and money. And the reason why I really liked the pre-vetting was the fact that it took all the guesswork out and the worry out of that equation for me. It was just like, I just want to show up, plug in, and give me a schedule and itinerary. And to your point, it's customized to be a la carte for your business and what your objectives are for that period of time. What are other typical objections you guys maybe you've heard on some of the calls you've been on with like clients who are a little bit hesitant to want to book, or businesses that were like, this is what I'm concerned with. How do you guys accommodate for that?
I think that making sure that it's actually going to do the job, be it internet, be it the speakers, be it, whatever fear that comes around the unknown, I think is the number one, which is it goes back to your point, like, Belize, which is predominantly where we do most of our retreats, although we do have other places like Panama and Kenya as two other options. That's a very well-worn path. We've had like 600 people plus come through that location. And, we've nailed the B2C, and now the B2B is kind of coming in over and above that. And I think like one of the things we always say to people when they have that concern is, hey, look, we've had X amount of successful, trips run in these locations. And that's why now we're moving forward with kind of bigger groups and teams, because obviously it's a massive concern. I get it. You're a line manager, you're a CEO. You don't want this to affect productivity. So I think like the fact that everything is there, ready for you to go, you get off the flight, you're picked up, and then you're ready to go. That I think is the main concern that most business owners and managers have. I think maybe the other one would be that it's just simply an unknown, I think, is the number one. Like, what am I going to get myself into here? Like, is this going to, really add value? And I think that it sometimes takes a leap of faith in these type of things. One of the things I've noticed is companies that have already done these trips, are very much more open. It's a little bit easier to go, hey, we're just going to do these trips in a better way for you, rather than a company that hasn't. But thankfully, most remote first companies understand the need for this, because we're all experiencing year 3 right now, and year 3's come with a lot of burnout. And so we're kind of like in this process of understanding. It's like, okay, yeah, we need to deal with this situation of burnout. We need to deal with the situation of disconnection. And the only way to do that is to meet in the physical space. So I think companies are starting to take the leap now. And I think that's the main reason.
Yeah, I think that's super spot on with like year 3 of relative to like COVID and when everything kind of shut down. There's an isolation feeling that's emerging amongst teams. And I've seen it like firsthand with the teams that I work with. So many people are craving those experiences. And why not serve that? Why not be like the gap or the bridge builder between like, hey, your passion is you want to travel with, you know, maybe your family or maybe with just your spouse, and you want to get it together in a unique location and experience more than just work. And now work's providing that for you. So I think from a hiring perspective and a retention perspective for companies, it's one of the best investments you can make in a team. The other thing I'll say is that even if you're sending like team members to events, it still can be an isolating thing. So I've been to like events, like networking events. You go by yourself, you have to go meet a bunch of strangers, which might be good for business, you know, and it's like networking and stuff. And we still have to do that. But that is not the same as what we're talking about here. I think this is a unique experience that increases the bond building between you and your teams. And again, looking at this on an ROI and line item, like, you know, in a budget sheet, it's a no-brainer for an investment. I just think that more teams need to, like you said, get familiar and comfortable with the process and all the unknowns that go with that. And the more you guys build the business, the more you guys, you know, have the references from people, and including myself. Like I went to Belize. I had a great time. I got to get a golf cart and drive around the Placencia the entire time and just have a blast. And I think that's something else we could talk about, but there's a family component of that and where that goes. Tell us about like the locations you guys are serving today, and also just some of the, maybe what's your favorite location so far?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that just came to mind before, you know, we get into that is like, you know, we've spoken pretty heavily about all of the side of this that's very like linked to work and productivity and all of those things. But I think something that happens naturally in offices is after work drinks, and it's something that allows for bonding. And I think that like that trust within knowing someone in a more personal level and being able to understand them and have those moments outside of just pure work is something that's worth mentioning before we get onto the locations. You know, those moments of driving around Placencia with families, it's the same principle with these retreats. It's like, okay, we do the work, we do all of the different activities, and then you've got this free time and you've got it in this amazing place. You're going to have these bucket list memories with your coworkers. You're going to climb a volcano with your coworkers. You know what I mean? That's something that you will remember for the rest of your life. And I think that those bonds that you create with that are really important. And I think that they're slightly intangible in the sense of really knowing what that will do to your team. But what I've seen firsthand is that those bonds that you make, they only help in everyday work life, you know. So that's probably worth just adding on there before I jump into your question about locations.
Well, yeah, and I will say that that is, I mean, I was so focused like on business, but I was forgetting the whole component of the personal side of people and just developing those other bonds, which to your point, you can't do in a remote environment from like Zoom meetings. You know, like you could try, but it's not the same feeling. So it was an incredible experience. I would just say that the excursions, plus I know that we can pick a la carte and like you can personalize it to yourself. I also like the idea of like someone else was managing and doing some selections for us, which took out the biased opinion of some things and opened our minds and eyes to other possible opportunities we might not have considered for ourselves. So it was, it was incredible. But yeah, I'm looking at the locations here, and I wish I had more time to travel in these days. But I mean, Colombia, Belize, Nicaragua, you guys have a long list. And yeah, so which one is your favorite, or which one's like, you know, the place you love?
Favorite, dude. Favorite's hard. I would say that like, if you looked at the time that I've spent in the countries, probably my favorite place is Buenos Aires. I lived there for like 6 years. You know, I love that place. And I feel like, you know, we try and deliver a unique local experience in every location that we do, but like I've lived that experience. And so I feel like we definitely deliver that. Kenya, another bucket list, you know, trip, going, you know, to Africa and being able to do a safari and all of what comes with that, I think is pretty unique. I think every trip has its own unique bucket list experience, like Guatemala climbing the volcano. Everyone I speak to who does that says that that's like a life-changing experience. We've got 3 new locations this year. We've got Portugal. Obviously, Lisbon is a hot spot for remote workers, and we felt like we needed to jump in there. So we're partnering with Yon, which is a great co-live space, and we're really excited about that. It's in March. And then we've got 2 trips at the end of the year, one for Day of the Dead in Oaxaca and the other in Marrakesh in a 20-bedroom riad, which is like a pretty authentic experience there. So those are the new trips. And then, of the existing ones, we do Panama regularly, we do Belize regularly, we do Buenos Aires regularly, we do Antigua regularly. Not sure if Barcelona, we're going to do 2 times again this year. We just finished Barcelona, finished 3 days ago. So we've managed to kind of take over Central America. We're slowly moving into South America, and then we're starting to take a claim in Europe and Africa as well. It's awesome. I think that in the next kind of 2 years, the plan is to have minimum of 3 locations in all the major time zones. So that's kind of so that you could essentially travel the world with us.
That's amazing. What percentage of people are digital nomads versus maybe some businesses doing the retreats? Like, I know you guys started with the digital nomad play, but is that starting to kind of balance out a little bit more, or what's the percentage look like?
Yeah. So what has always happened is, just like yourself, you're an entrepreneur. Like, we would have ad hoc a bunch of people who are kind of business owners coming on their own, or maybe with 1 or 2 team members, and just being part of a traditional trip. That's always happened. Now that we're actually fully focusing on doing retreats, I would say we're at about 10% of our trips are now retreats, and that's happened in the past 3 months. We officially launched our team retreats about 5 months ago, so it's been very, very quick. I think more quicker than we thought, but I guess there's the need for it. And then I think probably family it's going to take up a bigger part. And then our traditional trips are now broken into some more experiential stuff. We're about to do our first Friendsgiving. We have, I think, 25 people meeting up for Thanksgiving, all friends, and we're going to do a big banquet. So that's really cool. So we're starting to do a couple more experiential based trips. We're about to launch a trip in the next month, which is a trip to London, where you get I think 5 different festivals that you can go to wrapped into the ticket price. So that's really cool. So we've kind of got this, we've got kind of several overlays now. We've got an overlay for team, we've got an overlay for family, we've got an overlay for different experiential trips. So it's exciting.
And you guys have quite the alumni building. Like, I was checking out the group, and it's like, holy, there's a lot of people in there, and it's a very collaborative group. From what I noticed, people are like, hey, I'm traveling here, anyone else meeting up? And all of a sudden you see friendships starting to develop. So outside of the business realm of things and the culture building and everything we just talked about, there's an opportunity for just digital nomads in general to be meeting up with new friends and new people on trips that are always available, regardless of if the business initiates it or not. And that's really cool to see, just like, because again, I feel like I'm so behind on this stuff. I'm looking at it and like, oh, this has been going on. It's like, it's normal for other people, and I'm still like learning as I go, and I'm just so impressed by it. But I did make note on that. I wanted to, for a business, like, let's say that in 2024, they said, Daniel, I'm sold on this stuff. I'm in. Like, how do we start? How do we work together? And what's the timeline look like? If somebody said that I want to organize a trip, is it like, so give us a timeline and the breakdown of how that would work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's worth, like, any business owners or who are listening to this, you don't have to jump straight into a retreat. There are a couple other options. One of the other things that we're doing is just essentially us being an approved partner for your community or your company to travel remote. And because I think a lot of companies are worried, okay, one thing is a retreat, which is amazing, right? But the other thing is like, hey, I want to let my team know that they can travel while working. But sometimes it's a bit scary because you don't know where they're going. You don't know that necessarily, like, where they're going to choose, they're going to be able to deliver on what they say they're going to deliver. So some of the things that we're working is just kind of, as you have an approved partner for many other areas in your business, we're your kind of travel approved partner. And then the employees can travel on the traditional trips on their own accord, knowing that this company is kind of like approved Noma Collective. So that's and if any companies want to do that, we can work out like a special discount for their employees. And that might be a way for them to, pre-retreat, start to get a feel for how those, employees work while they're on those trips. So that's something just to think about. Second is that, if you want to do a retreat, we need a minimum of probably 6 people. I think that's probably like the minimum you would need to do that. The lead time realistically is 2 months, but people are generally booking this 6 months out at least, especially for it's more for them and their teams rather than us. As I said, Belize is a year-round destination for us, so we can turn it around pretty quickly. And what does it look like? Generally, what happens is I'm generally dealing with most of these at this moment. We're still a small team, so I will speak to the CEO or the relevant person. We'll have a chat about what they're really trying to get out of this. Generally, people, when they're reaching out to us, they're already having in their head, something they're wanting to get out of this, right? Wanting to team bonding, wanting to get like team release, wanting this to be a bonus for their sales team. There's some sort of core goal that they have. And then together we'll help build that. Some teams want stuff very minimal. Some want stuff really detailed. Like, for example, I'm working on several trips right now, and they're literally polar opposites. One is like, I want everyone to work. I want us to meet up afterwards, and I don't want anything else. And the other is like, no, we're going to cut work at midday every day, and we want 4 hours of training on like team building, for example. So it really just depends on what they want. And I guess it is worth, saying this third option, which is kind of the third area of the B2B model that I'm looking at, is we're actually finding that not just businesses want this, but actually communities that were built in the digital space want to then meet in the physical space. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be a business. It can be a community. It can be a group of friends. I've closed recently basically a friends reunion, just a group of friends that used to do it together. They don't have the time to do it anymore. They came to us, we do it. And I've also closed a community, like a digital nomad community that had grown during COVID, and they finally wanted to meet in the physical space. So I think it's like really what we're doing is just facilitating the meeting in the physical space for whatever group of people, be it a company, be it a community, be it a group of friends. So that's like, I don't think it necessarily has to be a company. Obviously, that's like one of the really important parts of it. But I think that it's just focusing in on that, like facilitating meeting in the physical space.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because they were that even considered as far as like your primary like avatars of customers and who that would be. So even like a mastermind group that does like Slack masterminding, but they want to be in an actual location at some point. That's really interesting. So like to recap, especially if you look at the Noma Collective site, there's already locations and dates planned. So those are like available. And then it sounds like you can also do custom a la carte planning with you and your team. A little bit more like deeper planning has to take place, maybe a little bit more lead time. Usually a minimum of like 6 people. What's the maximum groups you can accommodate?
So I think the biggest group we've ever had is like 52 people. Okay. And that was a like high season in Belize. And it was, like we can scale with the community. What happens is it just generally breaks down. Like we have a kind of a 15-to-1 metric for community managers. So, the bigger the group, the more infrastructure we need on our end, but it's totally possible. I think, Umaya as a location has 48 condos. Umaya is our location in Belize, where we run our trips, 48 2-bed condos. So our max amount right now would be, 96 people, I think would be the max that we could do. I think that the sweet spot for this is probably around 40 to 50 people if you as a big team. I think that we're open to larger groups. We would have to add some infrastructure, but that's all super easy to do on our end. So
And you mentioned Belize, man. I got to share a little bit of Belize because it was just an incredible experience. So we wanted to go and travel as a family. This was one of our core missions in life. Once we had kids, it was like, I want to be traveling. I want the kids to be part of our life. And I don't want to have a separation between business and personal. I want this beautiful merger of both so that, when I'm traveling, the kids are coming with us, my wife too, and we travel together. That's it. We'll never probably be digital nomads like full time, but like we'd be waking up. We're in Umaya. We're on like the ground floor, walk out on the lagoon side, get to see like, I don't know what they're called in Belize, but like the big lizard looking crocodile things there. They just like be walking around. We'd kind of like get the sightsee and just for free, it's like almost like a zoo that you could actually be a part of. And then we have groups of people beside us that have their families there. They're also remote workers. So you have so much in common with these people, even though you've never met them. At least in our experience with the family edition, being that I didn't know anybody before we actually got there. We had a discovery call and it was nice to hear from people, but like we had no idea what to expect. And we were just surrounded by such wonderful, loving, kind, nurturing, supportive people that all were in it together and all had the same dynamics, meaning they had kids, they're trying to make it, trying to get their work done. There was care for the kids during the day. They had, you guys had a day camp going on. The kids had a wonderful like Montessori style education in the daytime. And then we got to, do stuff in the evenings with our kids and the other families. And we made so many great friends. And to this day, we still talk to them. And we got to experience so much in a limited time span that I'll be honest, before we took the trip, there was so many questions like what's going to happen? How do you travel with kids? Especially if it's your first time, which it was for us. It was scary as hell. After we did it, we're like, oh my gosh, like why did we scrutinize over this so much? And anyways, I think it was an amazing experience. On the family side, anyone listening that has a family that's looking to travel and make this work, this is like your first step you should try. Even if outside of the business stuff we're talking about today, it's definitely a great family experience that you guys have started. I think it was last year was your first camp you guys put together, and now you've opened some new ones this summer.
Yeah. I mean, the family was born out of the fact that I had a kid and looked around and there was no infrastructure to do this, and I wanted to continue doing it. So I think that we are, again, living this as we go. This is just something that wasn't possible a couple of years ago, and now it is. And sometimes just that simple connection of two things, summer camps have been happening for ages, remote work has been happening for a while, putting those two things together. And as you said, merging those two worlds and making them one, I think it's better for everyone. Kids get more time with the parents get more time with the kids. And I think the kind of the final thing that you touched on, which is something that we really always try and do is, like-minded people to experience this with. We do vetting calls. We make sure that all these people have similar understandings. Not completely the same, because we don't want to bubble either, right? But it's like there is something about someone who wants to make that jump, who wants to, try something new that you often have a lot in common with. And so I think that anyone who is unsure or has some fear or anything like that, we have a great team to talk you through it. We're actually starting seminars, where people could just come and join and kind of talk to me and talk to alumni. So I think that it is so new that people get scared, and it's logical. I totally understand it. So I think just to open it up to anyone who's listening to this and going, oh, it sounds interesting, but I'm not sure. Reach out, have a chat with us, have a chat with you, have a chat with me, and make sure that before you make that decision or you discount it, see if those fears are real or not.
Yeah. It's dangerous though, man. It's a slippery slope. Start doing one trip, you're going to want to go full on digital nomad.
I think that some people go full nomad, some people do a couple months a year, some do once a year. Whatever is the right pot for you, we're there to help. I think that the full life isn't for everyone. And I think, there's a general curve. I think, you do, if you're a full nomad, you do it for a couple of years, you find a place you like, you end up spending a bit more time there. I don't think, there is the odd person who's nomad forever, but I think it's like that. It's that balance. It's about finding what you want that works for you in that moment. And then the reality is those things change over time as well. And so it's hard to think that the same place would give you the same thing that you need for the whole of your life. I mean, that's unlikely. So why not have a look around the world and see what works for you?
Absolutely. Well said. Listen, Daniel and I talked before the call. We're going to be giving out a little bit of an extra incentive for anybody looking to make this jump, make this leap next year, try the trip, whether it's with a business or yourself or your family. You guys have a bunch of trips lined up in 2024. And whenever you're listening to this, I'm sure that you guys are going to open up more trips. So we're going to arrange for a specific link. It's partnerupprofits.com/Noma. Use the code PARTNERUP. I can't tell you exactly what it's going to get you today, but it's going to get you a very sweet deal for the next 5 people who go there. And then, of course, Partner Up will still continue to be active and get you a little something. But for now, Daniel's been kind enough to share a very nice incentive to get people over the line and benefiting from this wise investment. I want your craziest testimonial from somebody that went on one of these trips that first pops in the mind as to like, they got married, they discovered, this or that. What was like a story that sticks out to you?
So the story that sticks out to me is we had an ex-vet who was, I think, stagnant in his life. He had PTSD. He told everyone at the start, don't wake him up on the beach because he may be freaking out basically. He had this transformation within 3 weeks. He stopped having PTSD. He stopped having those nightmares. He ended up selling his car, letting go of his lease, and he's been full nomad now for about a year and a half. He's lost a bunch of weight. He's raring to go. He's a completely different person. So that's the one that stands out because it's like a full transformation. But we've had a couple marriages. We've had a couple babies. There's quite a few I could go into.
That's awesome. It's transformative going on these type of trips and experiences. The things that happen afterwards, you can't even predict, but it's a very satisfying experience. And I can speak from just personal experience. And this was a trip with my family. Okay. Let me tell you, first thought is stressful, but it wasn't, there was some stressful times, but not because of any of the reasons that you guys brought on. It was just it is a little stressful to travel with the family, but, we'll end here. I have one more question for you, though. We skipped over one question whenever we got cut off in Belize when we did the interview. Unfortunately, I think my phone timed out on me or something, which was embarrassing. But that being said, I always have a top 10 fire question round for everyone on the podcast. I think the one that I missed was what's a bucket list item, which, talking to you, I don't know if you have any left, but what's a bucket list item that you want to do or just a new chapter in your life that you haven't written that you want to write?
I want to discover India. It's a very personal one for me. I want to go to India. I want to live it. I feel like it's calling me. I have to go there. There's something so unique about it. There's something so different about it. I really feel I understand Central and South America and Latin culture. I've done it for 12 years. Obviously, I'm British, so I understand Europe to some extent, at least my experience. But that is just there's something there. And every time anyone speaks about it, they're like, oh man, you could go for a year and you haven't even seen half of it. You know what I mean? And so, I think that's I don't know when, because I don't know when I'm going to do it with my little one. I don't know when it's going to happen, but that's the one for me.
All right, man. Well, that's going to be the other question I usually ask is what are we celebrating in a year from today? It might not be a year, but we'll definitely celebrate that when that happens. Daniel, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. And I'm so excited with what you guys have put together and what's coming in the future. And for everybody that's going to experience this, trust me, take the leap. It's worth it. I'll have some links in the show description below, partnerupprofits.com/Noma. Use Partner Up. It's going to give you a little gift, trust me. And you're going to be talking to Daniel probably straight up in an interview at some point and maybe even meeting him up in person. So Daniel, any final remarks?
As I said before, don't let fear be the reason that you don't at least do a bit of digging in this. It's a jump, it's something new, but we're happy to. What's the saying? My partner always said, "We've got your back, but we don't hold your hand." So I'll leave you with that.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being on the show, and everyone listening, trust me, do it. You're not going to regret it, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Take care.